Welcome, everybody.
We are live.
My name is Jason Aponte.
I am Andrew Pasquini.
We're working. That's it. We're working over here. That's it. Let's go Niners.
Let's go Niners. Sprint Ride Option Podcast. Hello, we are live. It is a new episode of the Sprint Ride Option Podcast. You're getting a little bit different view of my apartment. My camera broke, so I'm using the stationary one. There's that explanation. Joined, as always, by Jason Aponte, but having me a little excited. I'm very excited for our guest today. I've known him for a very long time. He is with Candlestick Chronicles. You catch him there. You can listen to him there. You can also catch him at 95.7 The Game, and he is also the managing editor at NinersWire.com. Most importantly, though, he is the greatest defensive shortstop in Sacramento Media Softball League history. He is, do you think I would forget that? He is Kyle Madson. Kyle, how you doing today?
That's funny. I'm terrific. That intro was really great. Thank you.
Yeah. Andrew's the best in the business when it comes to that. I'm just lucky enough to be on the ride. No, I'm just lucky enough to be on the ride with him. But Kyle, thank you for joining us, man. We know you're really busy, a man of many hats. Literally, we know that you have, we literally were just talking about that. But for anybody that's here watching live, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we go live. A lot of fun content. The 49ers actually won a football game. What do you think, Andrew?
It was very exciting Monday night, and that's what we're here to talk about with Kyle. The Niners beat the Los Angeles Rams 24-9, seventh consecutive time in the regular season. I still hate that I have to throw in the little regular season thing. That's whatever. It is what it is at this point. Kyle, what were your thoughts? It was the best win of the season for the Niners. There's two to choose from. The Seahawks one was up there as well, obviously. We're going through the superlatives early in the season, but it was obviously the best one of the season. Best game of the season for the Niners is what I was going for. What were your thoughts against the Rams going into it and after?
Yeah, I was definitely a little bit concerned. I think everybody was, that their offense, after watching it against Denver, and Denver's defense pretty good, but their offense just looked so disjointed. And I think the concern was, is their offense going to get to a level where they look like they did last year? And so they didn't quite look like they did last year against LA, but it looked close enough, right? It looked close enough that, hey, in 3-4 weeks, they might get on track where I don't think it's going to look like 2019 where they were second in the league in scoring.
Yeah.
But it's like, they'll be able to do enough where they're, winning 11, 12 games and making a playoff run.
Yeah. And look, this game for me felt like the perfect time for Jimmy Garoppolo to have this type of clean game. And I know we weren't going to talk about it, but it felt like when everybody's ready to count that man out, he'll go out there and he'll, totally redeem himself, right? And it just felt like this was a perfect bounce back opportunity against the Rams. And realistically, when I looked at the way that their offense was operating, everything, they don't really have a deep threat. Everything's kind of in front and in front of the sticks. The 49ers are too fast for all of that. Now you have no running game. Stafford's a little banged up. Not to say that the Rams are going to totally look like this, going forward, because they do play again in 4 weeks. But right now, this team, it wasn't a good matchup for this 49ers team, regardless of how the offense was rolling, just because of how historic this defense is looking right now at this point.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Obviously, the fun thing about the Jimmy Garoppolo thing you mentioned as well, too, is like 225 and a touchdown. That's all they really need from him to look like that team, right? Like, obviously, I don't think it's going to get to that point of leading the league in scoring or second in the league in scoring in 2019. But you saw what, if the Niners offense can just score a little bit of points, 24 is not a massive amount. It's a good amount, but it's not like a, Buffalo Bills amount of points.
And look at Talanoa Hufanga contributing to the offense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So 17.
Probably not the last time that's going to happen this year.
I mean, I'll take more of those touchdowns if it leads to wins, man. I mean, 17 for the offense and 7 for the defense pretty much probably adds up to a W.
You know what's kind of wild about Jimmy Garoppolo and just the Niners offense in particular, because Garoppolo was fine. Like, he was just Jimmy at that. Like, it's whatever.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating because if he hits, you remember the throw against Denver where he had Deebo wide open down the sideline and underthrew it, and Deebo had to turn around and fall down. If he connects on that at 6 and his stat line looks dramatically different, the 49ers probably win. If he connects with Charlie Werner, they probably have a touchdown instead of an incompletion. And his stat line looks dramatically different in a more convincing win. And that's just kind of how small the margin of error is for this offense between like, yeah, it was just good enough and like, oh wow, this is an offense that's going to score a ton of points. And that's why I'm optimistic. And the fact that they have that game in their bag still, where they just go out and they just punch the Rams in the mouth because it's just kind of what happens in the regular season. That was very, very encouraging, even if it didn't look amazing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, and I think that's the game what the Niners needed is, yeah, it's not the prettiest of wins, but it's a win, and it's against a team they traditionally beat who's considered a relatively good team. I still think it's 4 weeks into the season. They haven't looked great. Like to think the Rams are still a great team. It continues the trend of the Niners having pretty bad losses going into the Rams week and straightening it out against the Rams as well. You mentioned that margin of error with Garoppolo, and I thought the other way I think you could look at it as well too is the Deebo effect. Is Deebo didn't really have that big play in Denver, and the offense, I don't know if they struggled because of it, but Deebo has the big play Monday night against the Rams. What were your thoughts on Deebo Samuel, the play, and just obviously importance in the offense?
Well, so that play specifically, like I thought I'd run out of being amazed by Deebo Samuel because like we've seen it all, right? Like we the touchdown he scored against Cowboys in the playoffs was nuts. His playoff touchdown against the Rams was nuts, but that was just different. That was like, man, great catch, broke a bunch of tackles, used his vision, got a feel like it was unbelievable. It was one of my favorite plays maybe ever. As far as his importance to the offense, I think he's too important.
Yeah. Because
anytime they need to do anything, it's like, oh, it's got to go to Deebo here. Like they have a first round pick in Brandon Ayuk. They have George Kittle. They have Jeff Wilson Jr. or pick a running back. They have Kyle Juszczyk. And I know Juszczyk, they used him a little bit the other night, but I almost feel they're too reliant on Deebo Samuel. Not that that's like bad necessarily because he's amazing, but they need it can't be all Deebo all the time. It can't be like, oh, Deebo had a bad game, the Niners scored 4 points, like or 6 points, whatever. I don't know. But that's kind of, I don't know. Like,
no, I hear you. And I think that for the first time they actually put Deebo in the backfield and didn't give him the ball, which is at least putting something in the mind of the defense that it's not always going to be you can just key in on him. And I thought that was a great thing. You know, look, a lot of people were upset when Deebo Samuel wanted his worth. I say that play is exactly why you pay that young man and why he wanted to get paid that well. Yeah, I mean, it's true. You run out of superlatives. You run out of ways to say, wow. You run out of ways to say Deebo Samuel's good at football. And I don't think we're done being amazed by him. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of the coolest plays I've ever seen. You know, good enough, you know, watching it streaming on my screen. I'm like a few seconds behind, as you can tell. Been a little bit off of Twitter, so I didn't get it spoiled for me. So I was able to watch it like and just like, oh my God, like what the hell was that? And that's how amazing that run was, man. And it was really cool that it came at the expense of Jalen Ramsey at the end. So
I think that's a cherry on top is like he ran over Jalen Ramsey, a thorn in the Niners' side. And it's, as Kyle said, it's almost a concern that when this offense needs a big play, it's just, they'll give it to Deebo. But on the other side is it hasn't really been stopped. So you can't, I can't necessarily blame Shanahan because there is more often than not that feeling of Samuel is going to have a big play at some point. It's more of a when, not if it happens. As long as it consistently happens, I guess it's not an issue. But yeah, it's definitely a crutch to this offense, but it's also an advantage to this offense. It's an interesting thing. And then also, too, with the win on Monday, we talked about the Hufanga pick six, just the defense as a whole. They're looking really good early on in the season, building off of last year. Kyle, what were your thoughts on Monday? And then we can kind of transition into the talk of through the first 4 weeks. The defense was supposed to be good. Is this surprising, though, how good they are early on?
No. I'll say for Hufanga specifically, I'm a little surprised he's as good as he's been. If you watch him at USC, it was clear like, oh, this guy can play. He's Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. He's around the football a lot. He generates a ton of turnovers. But I wondered about his functional athleticism on an NFL field, and that's just not been a problem. He's been amazing. But I thought going into this season that they might be better than their defense in 2019, even without DeForest Buckner. I just thought that their secondary was more dynamic. You have a more experienced Fred Warner. You have a more experienced Dre Greenlaw, who's been incredible since week one. So I just thought in all three levels, they would be really solid in a way that was better than they were in 19, of course, when they went to the Super Bowl. So I'm not super surprised by the play as a whole, especially when you consider like what Samson Abukam's done this year and how he finished last year, like the back half of last year in the playoffs. It was really clear he kind of got his legs in the defense. So I'm not to say I would have predicted that they'll give up 4 touchdowns in the first 4 weeks, but it's not shocking that this is one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best.
Yeah, and Kyle, I just want to read this comment from JKBG. Just don't get thrown off by these comments. Sometimes they're they're really funny.
This one got me.
Yeah, he always is like this, man. So I've got to read it for the audio listeners. JKBG says, if I could go to the Panther game, I'd have a sign that says, "Hey, Carolina, where'd you get your quarterbacks? At the toilet store?" And that's Andrew, I'm waiting for you to tell me what movie that's from.
That's not going to happen.
Goodness,
you're probably
gracious.
Hold up. Hang on. Pause.
Yes, hello.
Pause
He's dead serious. You got it, Kyle. Go.
I'm not a movie guy. There's a ton of classic movies that I've not seen, but it's extremely rare that I pull up on somebody with less movie knowledge than me. B, I don't think I said A, that was A, but B, bro, that is you're what, 29?
Yeah, that's perfect. On the dot, 29.
29? Dog, everybody's seen Anchorman.
Oh, that's Anchorman. I knew that.
Everybody has seen Anchorman.
I'm sorry. Listen, I've seen Anchorman. I know. Okay, yes. I'm not good at references specific, and that's okay. I've seen Anchorman.
Oh, my
confirmed
goodness.
that. But yes, no,
so good, Kyle.
I'm very bad with movies. Kyle, you'll like this one. I finished Harry Potter in June of this year.
My man.
Watched through all the way through. TV, just finished Game of Thrones. Like, I'm very late to all.
Up. No,
I'm late to all. Yeah, I'm halfway through the Marvel movies. Jason has a list of about 40 movies alone I need to watch.
And Kyle, we're in a group chat that, if anyone ever found the contents of that group chat, I think we'd probably be thrown out of all of content creation. Of
course.
But it would literally be Jordan, myself, Rich, all of us just rattling off Wedding Crasher comment. And he's just like, maybe I need to see this movie one day. We're like, Andrew, yes, man, please.
Dude, just get ripped and watch it. It's Wedding Crash is incredible.
That's the plan. As I said, I have a list of movies I need to see. Wedding Crashers is definitely on. I started watching Curb Your Enthusiasm just to understand some of the references that were being thrown out, things like that. But yeah, no, my movie knowledge not great at all.
That's all right though. I mean, we're not here to talk movies. We're here to talk 49ers. First place 49ers, Andrew Pasquini. How does that feel?
Oh, first place, it's great. It's amazing. Through 4 weeks, that's where you want to be, right? If there's any point of the season, you want to be in first place. But yeah, so back to the Niners. Obviously, you mentioned Hufanga, how he's beaten expectation. I think that's for a lot of people as well. Obviously, we're a pro Jaquaski Tart podcast, so the transition in the off season was a little rough for, but we're seeing it now, and there's definitely the potential that's growing this season. I want to talk about, though, the two pieces that might be returning soon as well, Jason Verrett and Jimmy Ward. And it's a scary thought, but can this defense get better with the addition of these two?
Yes, definitely with Jimmy Ward. And Tayshaun Gibson is like, what the hell? The guy signs like 3 days before the last preseason game, and he's just been a really good starting free safety in a defense where that position is super important. That's kind of amazing. But no, Jimmy Ward, I think when you're putting Jimmy Ward alongside a guy like Talanoa Hufanga, and this is not to take away from Jaquaski Tart, but he didn't generate a ton of turnovers, and Talanoa Hufanga in four games has generated 3 with 2 interceptions and then the tip. So I think that's going to help Jimmy Ward a lot, and he's a better player than Tayshaun Gibson. So they'll certainly get better in the back end there. Although I'm not really sure like how. I think it's more they're going to they held the Rams without a 20+ yard play,
which is
0
insane.
Explosive play. That's really hard to do. ESPN had the stat. That's the first time the Rams have done that since 2007.
Yes.
It's bananas, right? So I think it's less like, I don't know how much higher Jimmy Ward raises the ceiling, but it's like, hey, this is now sustainable, because if Tayshaun Gibson played for 12 weeks and just fell off a cliff after week 6, That wouldn't be a massive surprise.
No.
But you put Jimmy Ward in. It just gives he's a little more versatile. We know they can drop him into the slot. He can play coverage. So it's just kind of he makes what they're doing to me more sustainable. And then I'm fascinated to see what they do with Verrett, right?
Yes.
Because maybe they throw him in the slot. But Deommodore Lenoir Sammy Womack was fine there. Deommodore Lenoir's been fine there. I'm wondering if they're just going to kind of keep him on ice and basically let him sit. He's coming off a torn ACL. He has this long injury history. It's like, man, if they can keep him off the field and they suffer an injury with Mosley or Ward, okay, now you can put Jason Verrett in. Like, having Jason Verrett as your first corner off the bench is nuts.
No.
Considering that this team played Drake Kirkpatrick on purpose last year. So I think that's going to kind of be his role, is like, unless they have a dire need to put him in at nickel, I think he's just gonna kind of be a reserve and be maybe the best backup corner in the league.
I think that's what makes this whole thing exciting is the ideas and you can literally do anything at this point. Like you said, Tashaun Gibson isn't playing poorly, so it's not like you've got to rush Jimmy Ward in there. Like, you can even take your time with his soft tissue injury and take his time and work him back in, because let's face it, I hate to disrespect NFL teams, but Carolina and Atlanta aren't exactly striking hearts.
Carolina sucks.
Yeah,
Carolina's very bad, yes.
Yeah, so they're not striking fear in the hearts of defenses, right? So you can play around with this idea, and I love the idea of Jason Verrett being around just in case. And who knows, later on in the year, if things change, and this is such a week-to-week league, you never know what will happen. I don't suspect that anybody is going to just fall off a cliff, but weird things have happened. And I think that's why when I gave my little hot take about recent defenses, 2019, 2012, I said that I'd take this one because this one is the one that actually has the deepest secondary. Now, look, 2012, front seven, I hear you. Alden Smith, Justice Smith, Sapawaga, Ray McDonald. You got Bowman, you got Willis, you got Brooks. Got it. Back end, Whitner, Goldson, but then Chris Culliver, Terrell Brown, Carlos Rogers, right? Like, this is where this team right here, the secondary, and this is the first time in a long time, and this is easily the best secondary that during the Shanahan-Lynch era. It's the first time that you can marry man-cover corners to the pass rush that you're getting. Now, obviously, the defensive line, those four, it's probably not going to be the same with the four, but the depth on the defensive line. So give me this one. Call me the prisoner of the moment, but give me this one because of all of this depth now. Jimmy Ward hasn't played a snap. Jason Verrett could possibly be an alternate. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Kyle. Samuel Womack didn't do anything wrong to lose his spot. It's just that Deommodore Lenoir's actually been playing very well in practice. And again, now you're talking about supreme depth because Samuel Womack was fine in that spot. So this is where the edge I give to them. And then the final edge, give me D'Amico Ryans over Vic Fangio. Sorry, Richmond. Sorry, Mr. Madrid. Don't kill me, man.
Huh.
And I want to take it one further
really
too,
good.
just since we're talking about the secondary as well. And this is one I floated. This is the best Niners secondary since when? In your head, Kyle.
Jesus.
Yeah.
If Travarius Ward, if Mooney Ward is going to be like a Pro Bowler, because in 2019, Akello was really good to start the year, right? And then he has a foot injury. Mosley comes in. Mosley was fine. Witherspoon comes back in. He gets benched in Seattle, starts against the Vikings, gets beat for the tutty against the Vikings, gets benched again, and then it was Eman moving forward. Richard Sherman was a second-team All-Pro. K'Wan Williams is really good. But I think Talanoa Hufanga is already more impactful than Jaquiski Tart. And if Mooney, man,
I think you got him stumped, Jason.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to I don't want to. The thing is I'm sure there may be an answer like, hey, the 01 secondary was awesome. And I'm not. But maybe like 94 when they had Dion and they won the Super Bowl.
That's the only one I could think of.
I don't.
Dion McDonald, Merton Hanks, and Eric Davis. I mean that four. I don't. I don't think that there has ever been a secondary as good as that since then with the 49ers. And I think right now is where this is the territory we're getting to. And I think that's what makes this defense so amazing. It's just really a fun conversation. And of course, my take's a prisoner of the moment take for sure. I hyped up this defense all training camp, and that's why we said, hey, Trey Lance is struggling in training camp. might be that the defense is actually really good. Like that is something that's there. So, I mean, I just think when you look at the secondary, this is the first time everything was always front 4, front 7, go get the quarterback, play cover 3 and back up. Now you can do whatever you want. If you want to drop in a zone, you can. You want to drop man-to-man, you can do whatever you want. I think that's a flexibility that the 49ers have not had, not even in 2019 with Robert Saleh and with Vic Fangio, who never really blitzed. I mean, D'Amico's sending guys on 3rd and 14. Like, what the hell, man? Like, and you don't even have to if you didn't want to, but he's just right now operating at a level where enjoy your time. Well, enjoy the time while he's here, because he's gone next year. He's a head coach.
Yeah, no chance. The real quick, the other thing with this defense that I think makes it so good is because we're in this era that, I mean, even maybe more so than 2019 and certainly more so than 2012 and before that, this era of like offensive football,
Yes.
There's so much emphasis on that side of the ball, and it's so hard to stop modern offense. There are so many good offensive players in the league, but this defense is so perfectly built to stop what modern offenses want to do. They're taking away the short to intermediate throws with Greenlaw and Warner and Alshire and whoever else. They're so good at limiting those big plays. They can stop the run effectively. You can't get to the edge in the run game on them. They're brilliant. They have so many high IQ guys. I think that's what makes this defense particularly special. Even if player for player, they're not necessarily as good as 2012. If you want to make that argument, I think they're better built to stop a harder brand of offense, if that makes sense.
Look at us, Andrew. This is 21 minutes, and it's not all about. Look, you can create 49ers content without talking about Jimmy Garoppolo for 20 minutes. Unbelievable, man. It was something that I thought couldn't happen. Something I thought that people weren't going to do. But look at us, man. There's so many things to focus on with this team. We did it, Andrew, and this is what we talked about pre-show.
And that's what I was going to say too. It's such a fun hypothetical that the Niners defense is so good that we're comparing them to these great defenses of recent. Like this is such a fun hypothetical that I don't necessarily think there's a wrong answer either, because it just comes down to preference and all that. So kind of how I am with a lot of things. Defense is great. We know that with the Niners. So let's move to the offense, and that's where things get a little fuzzier. Obviously, we know the quarterback thing. I wanted to talk about the offensive line though, because I feel like the offensive line has done better than what the expectations were before the season. Because before the season, it really felt like, okay, you have Trent Williams and a bunch of question marks. Mike McGlinchey's done pretty solid early on in the season. So has that confidence gone up through the first 4 games? But then on the other side of the question is there's injuries. Colton McKivitz being injured, Jalen Moore now the left tackle, and not even injuries, but rotations with Daniel Brunskill stepping in for Spencer Burford. So I guess that takes away a little bit of it. But where's your confidence level with the offensive line through the first 4 weeks of what we've seen and the injuries and replacements?
I feel exactly the same as I thought as I did at the start of the year, in that I thought they'd be okay. Not necessarily great, but okay, because Kyle Shanahan is a good offensive coach and he can scheme around a hole or two on the offensive line. Things get shaky though when you start talking about Jalen Moore playing left tackle, and maybe they were showing highlights today on NFL Network. They were doing like the slow-mo like field angle highlights, and it hits Randy Gregory rushing against Jalen Moore, and Moore doesn't even get a hand on him. I just quick move by him. And it's tough coming into a game when you're backing up Trent Williams. And I know you'd say you prepare to get ready and you prepare to play, but like, bro, Jalen Moore's not sitting on the bench like, all right, I'm ready on this snap. Okay, I'm ready. Like, he's chilling. So I get why he didn't maybe play great in that one. I think he'll be better in a situation where he gets a full week of starters reps. I mean, left tackle is his natural position, so I think it'll be okay. My concern with the offensive line is how long can Kyle Shanahan be creative in game planning around it?
Okay.
And when they get behind, can Aaron Banks and Jake Brendel and Jalen Moore and Spencer Burford go backwards and pass block enough? That's where my concern is. Like on a snap to snap basis, I think they'll mostly be fine, but can they play from behind? Can Jalen Moore be better than he was in Denver? I think he will be. That's not super confident yet.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to look at it because the 49ers largely controlled this game and they had Jimmy Garoppolo in shotgun, quick passes. Everything was get the ball out, not put anybody in any harm's way aside from Spencer Burford's blown assignment, which literally had Aaron Donald on a dead run, never being touched.
Wow.
I think he was scared. I think he was scared that he wasn't blocked and he didn't know what to do with himself in that play. That really could have went left. But yeah, I agree with you, Kyle, we're going to find out more about this offensive line's pedigree because we saw Tom Compton last year step right in and you're able to scheme things up and keep him out of the way, right? But what happens in the Packers game when you've got to throw? What happens in the Rams game when you've got to throw in the playoffs? Well, yeah, that's when Tom Compton becomes Tom Compton, right? So I think that's a valid concern. But I do like the idea that, again, we're going to have 2 more weeks of not an easy defensive line. Brian Burns is a baller, man. Like in Carolina,
he's good as hell, bro.
Yeah, he's great. So they'll have their hands full in that way. But this is a little bit of time for them to build cohesion. And from all accounts, it doesn't sound like Trent Williams' injury is nearly as severe as we thought. I mean, I believe it was Jennifer Lee Chan who said something about him remarking to her that he'll be back in no time. So if he can take 2 weeks off and come back against the Kansas City Chiefs, I think the 49ers have enough in the run game and enough on defense to hold off the Titanic juggernaut that is the Carolina Panthers, followed by the Hall of Fame Atlanta Falcons back-to-back weeks. This is a good get-right spot for this team to stack some wins before the schedule gets exponentially harder with the Chiefs, Rams, and Chargers in 3 consecutive games.
Yeah, the offensive line is, as you guys said, hopefully Trent comes back because that really feels like the force that makes you feel comfortable with the 49ers offensive line. The next person we want to talk about on the line is a perceived part of the offensive line. It's George Kittle, right? There's a lot of conversation about his passing game, how they use him. There's a lot of thoughts that they keep him in. If you look at the snap counts, 27 pass plays, he only stayed back to block 3 times. So now the conversation is one that feels like it rears its head with George Kittle and the targets on the offense. What do you take as, or Kyle, what do you think of Kittle in the passing game and the lack of targets he's getting?
I have a bunch of theories because I don't know. So theory number 1, he's still a little bit hurt. We saw it last year. There was a play against the Eagles where, and I know he wasn't as unproductive at the beginning of last year, but he starts the season hurt, misses the first couple games.
Yeah.
And that's a groin injury. Like those don't just go away overnight. So I'm wondering if he's a little bit banged up because there's a play against the Eagles last year where he made a catch and got a first down and didn't do his celebration and kind of just like limped back to the huddle. And I was like, oh, that kind of explains it. And then as the season went on, we saw him, especially in the second half, have a couple of huge games and he looked like George Kittle again. So that's number 1. Number 2, of course, is like, hey, he's maybe not standing in and blocking like a tackle, but he's maybe chipping more and they're utilizing him more in that way where by the time the play develops and he's getting out into his route, the ball's out. That's kind of number 2. Number 3 is that teams are just kind of figuring Kyle Shanahan out a little bit. And now he's evolving and changing the way he calls plays and changing the way the offense looks a little bit. And he's still figuring out how to get George Kittle the ball and doing that. The last one, this is something I've got to go look at because I didn't think about this until today. So I've got to go check it a little bit. Jimmy Garoppolo is so good in the middle of the field and really prefers to throw into the middle of the field. I'm kind of wondering if they use George Kittle to clear out the middle of the field. Like I said, this is totally me just this is something I'm going to watch. But that's something I'm interested in. Like, is George Kittle running routes to clear out safeties and linebackers so Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings are open over the middle? That's the other question I have. But to that end, it's like, dude, he's too good to use him as a decoy. You got to give him the ball.
I think all 3 of those things that you said are absolutely correct, and I think it's a little bit of all of those things. The pass blocking thing has just become largely the narrative, but I think he stayed into pass block on 6 routes only.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot.
So yeah, that doesn't really correlate when it comes to that. I understand him chipping and things like that. I think number 4, what I would add is Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are really good too, and they need to get the ball. Like, what if we are witnessing, George Kittle being put at 3rd? You know, I mean, because you've got to get Deebo the ball, right? He's your playmaker.
Mhm.
Brendan Ayuk is evolving as a route runner. Hello, Jalen Ramsey. Even though you didn't get the ball there, you got cooked. But yeah, it's just it might just be that those guys are preferred targets right now, and I necessarily don't blame that. You know, at this point, I think a lot of the people are frustrated with his production. Probably have them on their fantasy team, but if he's out there and he's a threat and he's clearing guys out, like you said, which is something that I'm really now. Thanks a lot, Kyle. I was just gonna go lay down and go to sleep here on the East Coast.
You're welcome.
Now I got to stay up and look at the film
Yeah.
and make sure that I'm not seeing him just clear guys out. You know, appreciate you.
You're
But
welcome.
yeah,
That's what I'm doing tonight too.
yeah, there we go. But yeah, I think it's all of those things, and I do think that the injury thing is a little bit more prevalent than people want to notice. Like, you know, I think everybody believes, hey, he's playing, he's good. You know, 85%, 90% of George Kittle is still better than a lot of other guys, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's getting the separation that he needs to. And I think that he gets slept on as a route runner as well, too. So I think it's all of those things. And I don't think there's one specific answer. And I think that while we're trying to figure out this offensive line, Kyle's is going to use him in whatever way that he thinks is best, as opposed to getting him the ball. Although today's press conference was a lot more encouraging, talking about trying to get him the ball and how much they want to get him the ball.
I hadn't thought about the fourth option there either. I was leaning more towards the groin because those are tricky injuries. He has had an injury or history with injuries as well. I've leaned more towards that, but I'm very interested to see what you guys looking at the tape now find out with that angle, because I think that's a very interesting one. But as Kyle said, it reverts kind of to the George Kittle's too good to use him like that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot going on with it. It always seems to be a topic, and then he'll go off for an 120-yard game on 8 receptions, and nobody will talk about it again until they feel he doesn't get the ball again. So we've looked at kind of each individual spot with the Niners. We're here at about 30 minutes now. We're wrapping up. I want to know, let's put a bow on all of it. We're 1 month into the season. We used to say perfectly 25% of the way, a quarter of the way through. It's now like 22% of the way through. They added the 17th
So annoying.
game. It's annoying.
I
I don't like it. I like saying 8-8. I like saying 9-7. I don't like this 9-8 stuff.
And then 4, 8, 12, 16. It works so well a quarter of the season.
It's
easy work.
It's easy work. But so what are your expectations on the season based off what you've seen, how you feel? Where do you think this team can go? Kind of the ceiling, the roof, or excuse me, the ceiling and the floor for this team based off what we've seen through 4 weeks?
I think they should win the NFC West. I don't know if the Rams are that good, like you guys talked about. I don't believe in Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals. And the Seahawks, while not terrible, that's the Seahawks offense is outside of playing the 49ers. The Seahawks offense has been good.
That's what I was about to ask you, Kyle. And here, just to segue real quick into that, I just want to ask you this. So the 49ers defense has been largely amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think their most impressive performances against Seattle. Now, stay with me, guys. Stay with me real quick. Stay with me. Geno Smith is having a historic 4-game run in completion percentage, and he's not checking the ball down. He's throwing the ball down the field.
Mm-hmm.
And the 49ers didn't allow them to score a touchdown. So what's the larger sample size? 3 games of the Seattle offense doing what they're doing? Or is it just like, it's really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, Kyle.
Well, I posted before, I guess it was after week 3, I posted a thing about how the Niners were giving up 3.9 yards of play, and then was like, that's less than the 85 Bears and the 2000 Ravens. And somebody was like, well, they played 3 of the worst offenses in the league. It's like, well, they haven't though.
You're not watching Seattle, bud. That's what I would have said. You're not watching Seattle, bud.
They're not that bad. So, Seattle. So not as terrible as I think a lot of people thought they would be, but they're not. I don't think they're going to win the division. So I think the Niners should definitely win the NFC West. That gives them at least 1 home playoff game. So if you told me they went like 11-6 or 12-5. And won the division, I think that's probably about right. And then once you get into the postseason, who knows? Like their brand of football tends to travel well into January, and the NFC is not great. Like, is there any team when you look across the NFC where it's like, man, the Niners could not beat them? The AFC is a little different. The
Eagles are running away with it. The Eagles are just running away with it now at this point. Everybody's just ready to lap them up right now at this point. So
they're pretty good. But
I think
the Niners could beat them in a 1-game setting for sure.
Right. And I wrote about this today on Niners Nation, and that was the question I was asked. How many wins? And this is what's funny about the whole, the NFL's turned into everything's an event. everything's an event, right? Even the schedule release where people are like in front of their TV so they can make plans and
the announcement for the announcement of the schedule. Yeah, they tell us 2 weeks in advance.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can plan your games, but then the fun exercise is win, loss, right? Okay. So the first 2 weeks you see Chicago and Seattle, and you're like, well, Niners are starting 2-0. Well, they got their first test in Denver. Well, you go 1-1, and Denver's offense is actually suffering. And now here we are, and now the 49ers have a chance to go 4-2 going into the Chiefs game. And I think what I'm trying to say is the circumstances around teams change, not only with the way that they play, but the injuries, right? The 49ers could face the Chargers. Joey Bosa might not be playing in that game. And I don't think it seems likely that he's going to play in that game, right?
Yeah.
Right. And these are the things that people kind of forget. Like, while it's fun to do I'm not telling anybody what to do or like how to fan. Like, I think it's fun. It's fun to do the win-loss thing. But week to week, so many things are here. So, like, we've got a 4-week sample size of what teams are. And I think we kind of know what teams are for now. But yeah, I think 11-12 wins like is completely in the realm of possibilities. And I'd be shocked if the 49ers didn't win 11 games at this point.
Well, they got to 10 last year and they stunk for most of the first half.
Yeah.
So, I mean, their schedule's a little tougher this year, but I think 11 or 12 is definitely on the table.
Yeah, and it definitely makes you feel comfortable because even though the Broncos game happened and the struggles against the Bears, they still went out there and beat the Rams like they usually do in the regular season. It just kind of tells you, oh, well, everything's normal. We're fine. Nothing to really worry about, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that 11 – I'm more confident through 4 weeks into the season that the Niners can win the NFC West than I was before the season because the idea of the Rams coming off of a Super Bowl, knowing the talent they had, it felt – not ideal, especially with the situation with Trey Lance going into the regular season. You don't know what he is. But now through 4 weeks, yeah, I think this division is theirs. And I think the conversation of best team in the NFC is there as well. Yeah, the 2-2 record might say, what are we talking about? But outside of the Eagles and the Eagles, I guess, is like who's really been dominating in the NFC. Nobody. So I think the conversation through 4 weeks is absolutely there that they're the best team in the NFC. And I don't think it was there 4 weeks ago when the season started.
If they house Carolina and Atlanta, I think that'll be the conversation for sure.
Right. Pasquini, you're forgetting who's laying in the weeds. He's getting ready to come back at quarterback. They just won in London.
Who won it? Oh, the Vikings. Oh, nobody cares, man.
No, man. The New Orleans Saints won.
Oh, No, the Vikings won. Did they?
No, the Vikings won?
They missed the field goal. Yeah, the double
they
point.
missed the field goal. That's right. Okay,
yeah.
okay. Well,
I shouldn't know that because that's 6 a.m. my time.
They're waiting
That's
for
9 a.m.
Jameis.
your time.
They're waiting for Jameis to come back so they can lap it up and get back in it.
I actually just dropped Jameis for my fantasy team today.
Wow, that must have hurt. Shout out to Scott Hill for becoming a YouTube member. Appreciate you, man. And thank you for joining. But yeah,
sweet mustache.
Yeah, man. Is that Commissioner Gordon?
Kind of looks like it.
I'm on that movie. That's actually my next Marvel movie.
Dark Knight? Marvel?
Oh no, that's not Marvel. See, I'm so bad. I'm so bad at this. I'm horrendous at this. I'm sorry, guys.
Get him out of here, Kyle. Get him out of here.
Before I embarrass myself, Kyle,
no, stop.
I've already done it. Kyle, we appreciate it. It means the world. You're here. We're talking 49ers with you.
Dude,
tell the people,
man.
Tell the people where they can find you. All that I know I went through it, but you could a little more in depth. Tell the people what you do.
You can Google me. No, Marcus. No, hang on, real quick on that. Marcus Thompson from The Athletic. He covers the Warriors. He's a columnist now. He writes some really good stuff about the Niners. I had him on my radio show in college. This is like 2009. He was the first like real guest I had.
KSSU.
Yeah, KSSU. Shout out. His first like real guest I had. And at the end of the interview, I was like, all right, Marcus, hey, tell people where they can find your stuff. And he goes, you can Google me. And I just thought that was the greatest line. So I wanted to use it.
So good.
NinersWire.com, Candlestick Chronicles podcast, 95.7 The Game after every 49ers game. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Kyle, thank you, man, thank you for joining. And if you guys don't know who Kyle is, I doubt that you don't. I mean, God's verified.
Probably
he's like one of the funniest guys on there, man. Like, and has so much content. Like, dude, literally, like I was on with Brad earlier today, like for our show, and I kind of teased that you were coming on. And Brad said it, man. You wear a bunch of hats, not just cool hats because I think is it Cap City? You're
Hat Club.
lined up with
Hat Club. Yeah, Hat Club. I was. Yeah, I'm bald. That's why I wear.
No, but.
I am.
But what he meant was you're on 95.7 The Game. You do Candlestick Chronicles with Chris Biederman. Everybody loves that. And then the same thing with NinersWire, man. Like you're a very busy man. So to give us some of your time, we truly appreciate it, man. And you're definitely one of the pillars of this community.
Yeah, thanks. Really appreciate that. And anytime you guys need, let me know.
Oh, awesome.
That means the world. Quick KSSU story, just a side thing here.
Yes.
So I'm in my. I'm a
We get a
senior.
Sparky tattoo.
I wish I was actually the mascot. I was Sparky. I rebuilt it. I had to duct tape the box, and I'll post a picture on Twitter. You guys will see it. I got a whole what's called the spandex bodysuits. My legs were very skinny. They're still are. But no, so I'm sitting in the office at the old what's it called, the Union, where KSSU is located, and I'm a senior, first year as the sports director, and I'm sitting in the office with Suze. You know Suze, Kyle.
Love Suze.
And I go, man, like this guy on Twitter. This guy on Twitter is very funny. Like, you should follow him. You should go, who's this? Like, this guy named Kyle Madson. Like, I just started following him. He's hilarious. She goes, oh yeah, Kyle. I love Kyle. I'm like, oh, you know Kyle? She goes, yeah, he was the sports director here, and he went to Saxon. I did not know that, and that's the thread that connected Kyle and I. It was Suze.
Yeah, man. Suze vouched for you. She's like, hey, this guy Andrew. I was like,
Suze is the legend. We love Suze.
Awesome.
We've officially
get her on the pod.
We'll do our best. We'll get you and Suze on the pod. We'll get Dom too. We'll get all the sports directors and KSSU on the pod. Jason will just be lost. We'll make Sacramento references, and you'll just be like, I don't know. What's Sacramento?
Like, hey, we're heading to Old Town.
No, my favorite Sacramento thing with Andrew was because he lives in Sacramento. Like, oh, you're Kings fan. I think it was Kyle, actually, Kyle Breckwitz. He I think it was like the NBA draft, and he's like, oh, let's go, Andrew. Look who we got. And he's like, dude, I'm not a Kings fan. Like,
I'm not a Kings fan. I'm not he tagged like 3 or 4 Kings fans. I'm just like, the Warriors haven't picked yet. They're usually like, this is the first 20 minutes of the NBA. The Warriors are drafting
what's the lottery?
Yeah, like what? Well, as Warrior fans, we used to know what it was, but now we could be spoiled and be like, I don't know what that is anymore. What are we talking about? The lottery?
All right, real quick, just to piss everybody off, because we're all baseball fans here.
Okay.
One of the coolest things that happened today, Stephen Vogt, his kids announcing him. That was cool thing number one.
Yeah.
But the home run and then him jumping around the bases.
Yes.
And it's the Moneyball thing. How can you not find baseball romantic, man? And look, so many amazing things have happened this year. And for, Aaron Judge 62, cool. We know Barry Bonds is the I'm tired of arguing. I'm tired of being the Yankee fan that has to argue for
just
Barry Bonds.
Kills the vibe, right? Like, stop
Right.
taking away. Like, it's amazing. Just let it be that.
But Albert Pujols, man, and you and I, Kyle, we've had a little bit of a back and forth about greatest right-handed hitters, right? And I said Manny, Pujols, A-Rod, and then you're like, well, this Miguel Cabrera erasure, right?
Yeah.
Like, are those legit the best right-handed hitters ever? And and how much more does Judge have to do to even get into this conversation?
Judge needs a couple more years, I think.
Yes.
But I mean, he's only 30. He'll probably get into that conversation. Man. Like the fact that Miguel Cabrera is probably, if you're putting those guys in order, 4th is insane.
It's insane.
He's 3,000 hits, 500 homers. He's 300 career hitter. Triple crown winner. I think his career. I don't think his career on base is 400, but he had that stretch. His last couple years with the Marlins, he had like a 10-year stretch where he was top 5 in MVP in 8 of the years, and he slashed like 315 and 425. He was insane. I hit 33 homers a year. And the fact that he's 4th on that list, I think you'd be really hard pressed to find a better 4 over a generation throughout in baseball history.
Right. And shout out to the Mariners, man. The snapping the drought. Yeah. That's it. Now, who's on the clock? The Sacramento Kings have the longest drought now in sports.
Keegan Murray, bro. Might help him break it.
Oh,
Keegan Murray.
Hey, there is, as it is in every October, there is optimism with the Kings. Now, the question is with the Kings is, what month does that optimism end in? And we'll find out. Hopefully it's a little closer to the season. I also, just since we're shouting out A's catcher Stephen Vogt, Kurt Suzuki has been my he's still in the league guy for about 5 years now, and he played his last career game. Shout out A's legend Kurt Suzuki as well.
Yep.
So just throw that out there.
That's how you alienate football players at the end of this. Andrew Pasquini, as always.
Hey, let's go Niners. Kyle, thank you very much for joining.
You,
we really appreciate it.
You
Jason Aponte, as always.
Let's go Niners. Welcome, everybody.
We are live.
My name is Jason Aponte.
I am Andrew Pasquini.
We're working. That's it. We're working over here. That's it. Let's go Niners.
Let's go Niners.